Hi there, welcome to day 3 of the Dating Confidence or Dating Made Easier challenge. And today is all about confidently advocating for yourself. And whether or not you are someone who lives with a disability or you have something else about you that you feel makes you different. We're going to talk about how to communicate about that with your dates. So today's goal is to practice confidently discussing your disability or whatever makes you different and coming up with 3 ways to communicate about that and advocate for yourself. So we're talking about how to have maybe some tough conversations with potential dates. Okay. So you may be wondering in your mind, your beautiful brain of yours, what like when do I talk about my disability or different? What do I say? What if they reject me because of it? What if they ask uncomfortable questions? Can I get a look at singing you because we're getting feedback. So if you can mute, that would be great. Thank you so much. So today we're addressing all these questions and we're going to look at, well, how do you communicate all this with people? Okay. So there are 3 types of disclosure approaches. And disclosure is just another word for communicating about your disability or different, maybe sharing it in a way that they might not know if, say, you don't have an obvious disability or different. It's the way you disclose the information about it. So keep in mind there's no right way to do this. The right way to do it is the way that feels most uncomfortable for you. But the 3 general approaches is you say it early in a very casual way, and it can help filter out people who may have a discomfort with your disability or difference. For example, when I was single and using dating sites back then because there were no dating apps, I would put on my profile, I live happily with cerebral palsy. Feel free to ask me about it. Very simple, but very direct because it was right on my profile. And I'm sure that filtered people out who might have seen that and said, oh, I don't want to date someone with a disability, which to me is fine because you're saving me time and energy by not engaging to begin with. Okay, so that's the first approach. Second approach is casual and natural. So that's when it comes out naturally in conversation, and maybe you allow your date to get to know you first. And the third approach is direct and intentional, whereas it will be a more planned and serious conversation. And you decide the timing and the context of what you're going to say. Again, there's no right approach. Ultimately, you need to choose the approach that feels confident and authentic to you. Okay, so now we're going to look at some examples of scripts that you can use, some different ways of talking about your different slides are going crazy. Ways you can talk about your different disability. So in the early casual approach, you can say, I have cerebral palsy, or you may notice I am overweight. It's that one of your issues. It means, obviously, you probably don't need to explain being overweight, but you may need to explain CP, autism. And then you'd say, I manage it by, and you can say, I use a wheelchair, or sometimes use a cane, or I manage being overweight by however you manage. And then always open the door for them to ask questions. You could also say, you might notice I use a wheelchair, or I walk with the difference, or I'm a short person, and that is your difference. And then you say, I have the conditions since I was born, or since 5 years ago, and then talk a little bit about it. Say maybe it doesn't slow me down. I participate in these activities. Or you can say, just so you know, I am, and then explain your disability difference, how it may affect your life. Again, don't give them a PowerPoint presentation, just say this very simply. And things like, oh, I'm looking forward to us getting to know one another. And the key tone to this is you're confident, you're brief, and you're open to questions. So that's an example of the easy casual approach. Now let's look at examples in 2 and 3. So 2 was the direct, clear approach where you own it, you own your disability, you never apologize for that or any difference you have. and you said something like, I want to be upfront about something. I have blank, which has some that's impact on me. It's a part of my life, but it doesn't define me. Tell me what questions you may have. And just to be aware that usually when you initially tell someone about your disability or difference, they might not have any questions because they may need to take in what you said and think about it, and they may come back to you with questions. So also leave the door open and say, hey, think about this. If you have questions, I'm happy to talk about it later. Okay, so that's in the direct, clear approach. Now the gripper, and then just you go back so that you can see where we're at. Number 3, the direct and intentional approach. And this is where you're very clear about what you want to communicate, the details about your disability or your difference. And maybe you do that by saying your boundaries or needs. So this may look like, I need to mention that I have the condition, disability, difference, and I need this accommodation. Maybe accessibility, maybe a more quiet environment to have the day in, and say, will that work for you? Another way you can do that is saying, my disability difference means I do best with having a small, uncrowded environment to talk in, as an example, for a date. Would that work with you? I'm sharing that because I want to be upfront about what I need. So those are some examples of how you can very simply communicate with potential dates about your difference or disability. Now, if you get out the workbook and go to day 3, what you're going to do is to begin to look at what approach you want to take and how you disclose your difference and disability. And this should only take about 10 minutes, but there's a little checkbox for how you want to disclose your disability, and you want to begin to practice how you would talk about your disability or difference. And if you look on the workbook, there are a couple different areas where you can practice coming up with, say, a direct approach or a more conversational approach or an empowered approach to how you talk about your disability or difference. The key is you want to have an idea of what you want to say. You want to say it out loud and adjust it, say it a few times, and maybe make changes so that it feels authentic to you. And remember, you're sharing information, not asking for permission. So, because this can be a more sensitive topic, I want to address that sometimes these conversations cannot go the way we always want them to go. And people may ask inappropriate or difficult questions. And sadly, one of the biggest ones is, can you have sex? That is, for some reason, a biggie when you disclose disability. And it's okay to say, I'm not comfortable answering that question. Or another inappropriate, in my opinion, question would be, what's wrong with you? Well, there's nothing wrong with you, you just have a different. Or sometimes, and this thing can seem like it's coming from a good place, but it cannot feel good to you. It's that people then try to give you advice on how to manage or handle your disability or different. And that can sometimes feel not right. So here's how you would respond. You could redirect them. You could say, hey, that's kind of personal. Let's talk about something else. Or you could set a boundary and say, I'm not comfortable discussing that. Or if it's really offensive to you, and you have every right to choose to say, oh, that's feel respectful to me. I don't think we're a good match. You do not owe anyone details about yourself, your body, or your medical history. Before we wrap up, I do want to talk quickly about red flags versus green flags. So red flags are warnings that you want to look out for. And this is when people ask you invasive medical questions. They may make you feel like a burden. They may treat you like, oh, you're such an inspiration. Or they may ignore your boundaries. And you may feel like they're pitying you. And those are all red flags. Now, green flags, on the other hand, are when they ask some thoughtful, respectful questions, when they adapt without making a big deal about it, where they see your disability or your difference as something neutral, and they focus on you as a person respecting your boundaries. And I would highly recommend that you don't settle for anything less than green flag. Okay, another thing about the workbook is that you want to think about, and this is in parts C of day 3 of the workbook. You want to think about how you will respond to these inappropriate or difficult questions. It's always good to, hopefully you won't need it, but you practice it in your head just in case, so that you feel ready with a good response if someone should ask something inappropriate. And this can also help build confidence that, okay, I know I'm gonna say it, someone oversteps their boundaries. Okay, so your homework for today is to create 3 disclosure scripts, learn how to handle difficult questions, practice some boundary settings, recognize those red and green flags. And what you're going to do is continue your daily affirmation back from day 1. From today, you're gonna practice your scripts of how you're gonna talk about your disability or difference, and you're gonna reflect on what boundaries you may need to set more often about how people talk to you, dates in particular, about your disability or difference. And that is a wrap on day 3, and tomorrow we have our last day of the 4-day challenge, where we're going to create your action plan and take your first action after the challenge to your dating journey, to either beginning it or restarting it. So I look forward to seeing you tomorrow.